So there's really no good way to segue from that into this, but our next topic here is the question we asked of people online as well: single issues, trades, or omnis. What is your preference, guys, and why? Because a lot of people have a lot of different answers to this. I picked out a few that I'll show here in a minute.
Yeah, I brought examples. I don't know if you guys want me to start or you guys want to start, but
I mean that's great because I actually was going to ask, like, clear, single issues, and I think omnibuses are pretty prevalent. What's the difference between a single issue and a trade? Like, what's
I
was gonna say, I promise you, he's got some. I can show some.
We got issue number 1, a blue book over here by James Tynion IV, which I haven't read, but it's Aliens, and I love it.
And then here, I've got volume 5 of Something is Killing the Children, which is 5 single issues in one book.
Yeah, this is a trade. There's around 28 pages for the single issue. I would say is like the standard. Then we have trades. I have Enter the Blue by Dave Chisholm. Amazing book. It's about jazz. If you like jazz,
that's cool.
Then there's this weird
The Mask.
That's called an omnibus, but it's a trade that mainly indie comic books do. I would say there's like 2 trades in one. Then we have oversized hardcover, which is this is the same as a trade. They just made it bigger and they made it hardcover.
And they made it a hardcover so they can charge you an extra $3.
Exactly. And then we have
Killing Joke, so it's probably like the 45th reprint because they're trying to continue to keep that going.
And then you've got that which they also call an omnibus or a collected edition or a compendium, or they've got a bunch of different names. That's why I kind of tried to keep it to the 3 names.
That is dope.
Single issues.
This is what 1,000 pages. Right, wow. I think this one's
that's what I consider an omnibus. That is what I could like, a full big collected edition.
Yeah, because there's books that like are big collected editions, like for example, Strange Adventures. Great book, and it's a collected edition, but it still feels like an easy read. Like you can read it in one sitting, and it's not gonna fry your brain.
Right. It doesn't feel like an omni. It feels like just a nice big trade. Like
I mean,
So what's your main preference there, Stash?
The one I buy the most is single issues. Because I grew up with the idea of comic books are single issues. That's sort of what you see in media, what you see in real life even. So if I'm looking for, like, for example, I'm trying to complete my Spider-Ham collection. I have a trade that has every single Spider-Ham issue. So I'm good. But
you want all the singles.
I want all the singles. There's something special about being like, I own this one. And it's not the money, because like people can be like, oh, Secret Wars #8 is this special book that's $1,000. I don't care about how much it's worth. I have like 3 copies of Spider-Man 2099, the first issue. And yeah, those can be worth something, but like, am I really gonna sell them?
Yeah.
So I started my collection with just single issues. That's what I decided. This is what I want to do. Someone gave me a trade, and I was like, actually, this is not that bad. This is not the worst thing ever. So I started buying trades a lot, and I enjoy them. It's a quick read. If I'm going to work, I have an hour lunch break. I can read a trade. And I can finish a trade in that 1 hour. I know that for sure. And omnis are like my latest addiction. I only have 3, so it's not the worst thing ever. But it's so nice just to be like, oh, I had the whole story.
Yeah.
And see, like, I like single issues are probably my favorite because those are I can keep up with everything as it's coming out.
Yes, 100%.
But if it's not something I'm worried about keeping up with in real time, I'll wait for the trades.
I would
say,
because
the trades, I'm saving a couple of bucks by getting 5 to 7 issues in one book. So I'm saving a little bit of money on that front. And then also, I don't have the shelf space or the expendable income for those big, huge omnis, because those things aren't cheap. They can range anywhere from like 60 to 70 bucks all the way up to like 400.
Yeah.
Like they get pricey.
The Chris Claremont omnibus of like X-Men, like his original run is like well over $100 because I had it and then I sold it because I was like, I got through it. And
especially if you could get a hold of something that they don't print very often. Like Nightwing Year 1 is one of the hardest things to find in my area. I can't find it. It's just not there.
Well, for those who don't know, like some omnibuses, not some, a lot, they go in and out of print too. So
Yeah.
they're not always in
And
print.
some are printed more often than others too.
Yeah, I
like the big
know.
popular ones, they'll print pretty frequently, but the ones that are like quote unquote cult classics, those ones you're gonna be like waiting a long time for it to reprint, and you're gonna be paying a pretty penny when it does finally reprint.
Ultimate Spider-Man, you're gonna be battling that one. You'll get it. I know it. I bought it probably 3 months ago, and it's out of print right now. It's in back order at least. It's coming back in April, I think. And it's such a great book. So I'll say it like this: I don't have a favorite. I love. To me, when I think of comics, I think of single issues. I can say that much. And if you want to keep up with stories monthly, that's it. You don't need to buy more. But if you're a new reader, which I am, and you hear a lot about like, hey man, Jeff Johns, you know, he wrote The Flash and he killed it. It's gonna be a fortune to buy.
Trying to find all those single issues. Yes, that's one thing I've noticed. A lot of like newer collectors run into that problem when they first start, because they don't know that these are the same thing as the single issues. They think it's a different story or something sometimes, which is something I thought at first too when I first started getting into stuff.
Well, it's all confusing, and then you have variant covers,
and then you have variant covers, and then like we've gone into the issue with my issue with DC trying to find their trades and collected editions is they'll label things the story arc. They won't label it by what run it's from.
No, so you'll have
if you're
like
trying to find different, if you're trying to find a complete run of like the current Batman run, you have to start at like Rebirth, and then it changes into like something else, and then it goes into Joker War, and then it goes into Fear State, and then it goes into Future State, and none of it says Batman Volume whatever the heck. You know what I'm saying? It's all just Batman Joker War, and so to a new reader, they don't even know those are all part of the same run.
Yeah, it's complicated. Like for example, I'm trying to get into Superman right now. Like as we speak,
That's another one that's hard to get into.
I have it right
here.
They
label everything.
Like I just haven't found the right book, and I can show you right here. I opened my phone. I'm looking at an Omni. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm looking at a Superman Omni by Peter J. Tomasi and Patrick Gleason.
Oh, I've read a little bit of that run. It's really good.
It's so convenient to just be like, yeah, I cannot find like maybe a storyline that's like, you know, I can be like, oh, it starts here, ends here. But at least I know like, hey, people like those writers. Maybe I'll jump on in the first issue, because there's like, what, 40 issues, let's say, inside the book. The first issue, I'll be like confused. But then that's what I'll say. Like, if you want to jump into something and maybe it's confusing at first, just keep reading it. You'll catch up.
Eventually it will make sense.
Well, that's something that they need to do as well. Is like there should be like an essential omnibus collection that you should, you know, again, and there's ones that are in and out of print, but it is tough. Like if you want to get into Spider-Man or you wanted to get, I mean, Superman, I mean, you're talking about 90 years. Yeah. Like where do you even begin and what do you do? You know, like there's so many different
what's
errors.
Current continuity and what's not. How's a new reader supposed to understand all of that with the crisis events and what's Earth 1, what's Earth 2, what's Earth, whatever. Like, dude, DC is, and Marvel's really not much better about it, but at least they're a little bit better with how they label their books.
Yes, 100%. I mean, for me,
you know which run of Spider-Man you're buying. If you go to buy a trade of Spider-Man, it says so right on the back. It tells you exactly what issues are in it and it tells you what volume it's from.
I will always say, for someone who wants, like, there's classic Spider-Man stories. You know, you'll have Kraven's Last Hunt, where you'll be like, oh, this is something that I know I have to read. Yeah, people love it, and you can just buy that. You can buy the trade, whatever. For me, Ultimate Spider-Man it's a reimagined, you know, from the origin. You get from when he gets bit.
Yeah,
and it's, I mean, the Omni.
That's why I recommend that one particularly to a lot of new Spider-Man readers.
Yeah,
because yes, it's not main continuity, quote unquote, Spider-Man. No. But if you want a very good Spider-Man story that'll give you a very good understanding of the character, Ultimate Spider-Man is where it's at. You can read it from 100%. Beginning to end, and you'll know exactly what's happening throughout the entire thing.
Because the thing is, yeah, for example, for people who don't know, the Green Goblin is like a monster with wings, and sort of what you saw in Into the Spider-Verse. That version of the Green Goblin.
Ultimate Spider-Man is definitely an alternate universe as far as Marvel goes, because I mean they change all kinds of things about the story.
Peter Parker is Peter Parker. That's what I'll say. The essence of who Peter Parker is that's that book.
Mm-hmm.
I remember my best friend, honestly, and I don't know, like YouTube channels sometimes make a full reading order. I remember, I think Near Mint Condition did a Batman reading order, which I was like, thank God, because it's such a long history that you can at least be like, okay, this makes sense. And maybe you won't buy an order because maybe you'll hear someone say like, hey, the Snyder Omni is really good. It's complicated because people's brains tells them like, oh, you have to read it in order. That's where my brain goes for anything. It's like, oh, it's a full story. It's like I wouldn't watch a movie from the 31st minute.
Oh, it's like when you go to a comic store. I'm not one of those, like, if I can find issue 1 of something and then issue 4 of something, I will not read any of that run, even if I have the whole rest of the run until I find issue 2 and 3.
100%.
That's interesting.
Because it'll bug me because I don't know what happened in those issues.
Yeah,
so I know there's plot points. I don't know what's going on.
I forgot who the writer was, but there was a guy who wrote a book. And he didn't read all the extended crossovers and stuff, but he basically read 10,000 Marvel comics. And he read them actually by single issues, which is crazy. I think it took him like, I don't know how many years to do it. I don't know what he, you know, who knows? I think he went to libraries too and did, you know, he did all this stuff, and he wrote a book that basically helps you plot where to enter, like each run. And he was like saying, he's like, yeah, he does not recommend going in order because he does think that you're going to get bored. And I know for a fact I've read Amazing Spider-Man 1 through 30. And it is awful. It is. I said this before. I mean, the first 5 issues are in the first like 10 issues are really bad. Like the storylines are rough. Like it's classic.
And they're very, very wordy.
Yeah.
And very
old
dated.
Spider-Man is like,
and
this much text taking up half the frames.
Fights are over in one scene, like a little kick and he's done and is out. Like it's really crazy. And you know, he talks about Fantastic Four is a good example. And I was talking to someone this week about it. The reason Fantastic Four 5 is so tough to get, and you talk about the Doom cover, it is Doom, but compared to like Fantastic Four 1 through 4 is really rough. They don't have costumes for a couple of issues. They're fine, you know, and 5 is where it all starts to kind of come together with that run. So it's tough. You have to, it is tough, especially the older books. And then again, like you said, like there's different writers and different artists and different, there really should be a guide on this of how to help.
And I will say, there's a lot of paid some runs that I'll end up liking.
Yeah.
So I just honestly, even if, hey, sometimes you'll look at the cover and just like it doesn't matter. Just go buy it. You know?
Yeah. Oh, that's
the
what
cover
I tell
is
people
cool
all the time. Like if you are attracted to something by the cover, grab it.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people talk about, you know, oh, I started buying comic books because I saw this one cover and I thought it was great. And maybe that's the worst issue of that run.
But it was the first issue that got them into the hobby.
Exactly.
And that's what matters. And that one bad issue they will remember for the rest of their life as a good memory because it got them into something better.
I can tell you the first single issue I ever bought was Spider-Ham #1 by Seb Wells. So, I don't know how I don't know what people think of that run. I personally, like, in my head, it's the best thing ever. Not because it's I
haven't met many people who don't like Spider-Ham.
It's tough.
It's not an easy one to get into, though, because it's you can't go into it expecting this serious story, which some people do, you know.
And those people, I just like, those are the same people that are like, this movie isn't realistic. It's a movie. Of course, it's not realistic. It's a movie.
I just imagine that if I'm reading that, I'm gonna hear John Mulaney's voice in my head as Spider-Ham's talking. So I actually don't mind that, to be honest. But
so, Michael, I take it you're a single issue guy, though.
I'm definitely single issue. I mean, I'm also vintage, right? So for me, it's so daunting, like to get into some of the new runs and new arcs and things going on. And I'm, you know, obviously I have a pretty vast, you know, vintage collection, but I do want to get into some of the newer runs. But yeah, you gotta find what vibes with you. And I think it's different for everybody, and it's definitely not one size fits all.
Oh,
Omnibus, I will
100%.
say omnibuses are tough for me because I'm just too ADD. I'll read for a little bit and then I stop. And that's the
right.
problem.
That's why like a nice, 5-6 issues, I could sit through that in like 1 or 2 sittings and like, okay, that's done. I can move to the next one now.
I don't worry. I have 2 ways of doing things. For an Omni, either I start reading it, stop, start, stop, or what happened with Ultimate Spider-Man was I picked it up and for 4 hours I just sat there like an idiot.
That's awesome.
See, that can
That's
happen
great,
too,
though.
but those are great because, dude, that's how you know you're getting sucked into something. If you can sit there for 4 hours and not even realize it, bro, you know it's good.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I just to put it there, I don't think there's a real answer to what do you prefer. I like all of them. Whatever
Right.
gets the story in my hands, I'll take it.
100%. Because then we got Rome's Guide here from TikTok. He said, omnibus all the way. You don't have to hunt down all those trades or singles you're missing. Plus, long boxes are a hassle and cheaper in the long run.
Honestly, the way I will say, and this is my me advocating for Omnis, even though I only have 3. If you want to buy the trades, once you like think about it, if you bought all of them, you spend more than you would have spent on an Omni.
True, but the counter to that is that trades are easier to find sometimes than the Omnis. Because a shop will order 10 or 12 copies of a trade. They'll only order 1 Omni.
Oh yeah, Omnis are for me a strictly online thing.
Yeah,
I will.
Yeah,
that's one thing the apps are great for because you can sit there and start at any run and just read it all the way through.
No, and for me, like go on any website that really like sells Omnis, like dedicates to selling them, they'll discounts, and it's honestly the best thing you can do.
In stock trades, you got cheap graphic novels,
organic price books.
There's a whole
Some
bunch
of them,
of sites that
you can pay them off
really
in some
good
of them.
prices. Yeah, they'll do layaway plans on stuff.
Yeah, and it's a double-edged sword because you'll be like, oh, I'll pay it off, but you're paying off $5.
Yeah,
like you just maxed out a small credit card or something.
And by the time you're done reading the first one, you're already buying the next one.
Right. And we've got Cody Collects, who was their previous guest, and ComicBookStache's co-host says generally prefers Omnis, but he does like the deluxe editions as well. So that's that's where the definition of what an Omni and what a deluxe edition comes in. Do you consider a big thick boy to be an omnibus, or do you consider that to be a deluxe edition?
I don't know. I just read the cover. Whatever it says there, I stick with it.
And then our buddy Hillbilly Comics, he just said yes when asked this question.
That's great. I think he was saying yes to you saying big thick boy. He just was he appreciated
that. For me, I when I was told like this is the topic, I was like, great, single issues, 100%. And then
you started thinking about it.
I was driving home from work right before I sat here, and I was thinking I should grab one of each and just look at it and think. And I don't have an answer, man. I don't know if that's the boring thing to say. They're all great. It depends. Yeah. It depends on what you can afford.
Yeah, because I mean, I talk about the trades are easy to find. You save money on not buying so many single issues, and then I've got this just sitting. This is just my to be read pile that's next to me. I've got like 4 other to be read piles that I haven't even dug into yet.
Yeah, I will say this is a thing I found out recently. Image Comics, if you buy their volume 1s, like their trades, most of them, I don't want to say all of them because The Walking Dead
exactly what you're about to say.
This. They're $10. The first volume is $10. The Walking Dead
second volume, they get you.
That's like 15. The Walking Dead is the one where like I don't know why The Walking Dead is not $10 for the first trade. But if you want to get a story for people to buy, that's the one you have to push.
Yeah. I think it's because it's the one that they know is going to sell. It doesn't matter what price point they put it at because fans of The Walking Dead are going to want it.
They don't need to draw you in to lock you.
Yeah, not with that one. That one's too big. That's like Spawn. They don't need to try hard with Spawn. Spawn fans are going to buy Spawn. Like,
yeah, but
it's just one of those
what is there, 1 million copies out there of Spawn? They're
I think they're into the 300 and something now in the main line.
I think it's the longest running indie comic.
Mm-hmm.
I think so.
And it never had a spin-off series until recently. Now they've got the King Spawn, they got the Gunslinger Spawn, they've got Scorched, they've got a couple different runs off of it now.
I don't know much about Spawn. I just know some people love it, some people hate it. And the people that hate it really hate it.
I have noticed that. Like, people who don't like Spawn really don't like Spawn. But they've also read probably all of it.
Yeah. That's
the thing. Like, if you love it or hate it, if you know, like, if you've read Spawn, you've read all of it. And I'm guilty of that. I've read like the first 200-something issues of it.
Oh, I could not.
That's insane. It is a task to get through. I love Todd McFarlane's art, man. But his writing is, dude, I love you, Todd McFarlane. I apologize for this in advance. But, dude, early Spawn is hard to read sometimes, just because it's just the most plodding along. It's like trudging through mud. Trying to read early Spawn.
The early days of Image is like a very, very funny like story, because when they brought all those people over from Marvel, the Jim Lee, McFarlane, who else? Silvestri came too, and like whoever else, dude, or Liefeld, dude, those guys were artists. They weren't the writers.
That's the funniest thing.
So they'll even admit now. I mean, I was watching one documentary. I think it's speaking of Walking Dead, I think it was Kirkman's History of Comics or whatever on Amazon. It's a great one, and he talks about. And so they interview them, and Liefeld will admit, he's like, dude, we were the worst writers ever. It was all about the art. He's like, and we had the clunkiest storylines. And if you go back and read those like first few years, it makes no sense.
But the artwork was phenomenal.
Yeah, no, the artwork's great. They had the best in the business. But I have this, I don't remember who drew it, and it's not early Image. It's like the first 10 years, I would say, or first like 5. There's this book called Union, and it's like the art is out of this world. The art in Union is so good, but I struggled so much reading it, and it's only like 5 issues. But I was like, I committed to this. I'll finish it, and now I look back at it fondly. I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't know if anyone knows that book other than me, and I get why they don't know it.
But now it's one of those things where you hear somebody bring it up and you can be like, oh, I know what you're talking about. I love having stuff like that, like obscure, random, useless knowledge that actually comes in handy in a random conversation one day.
Well, that's like the fun part of it, is like when you know something, and also when you know something and someone else, you can connect on it and they're like, I do remember that. Like that,
I don't know, man. It's funny because that's how my brain works for the most part. Like, I just remember random bits of information and they just stick then. Like, that's how my brain works. Like, people will be like, yeah, Queen Elizabeth II. And I'll be like, oh, I'm born in 1926.
See, that's how I was. Like, I was always a history buff in school. So, like, history facts stuck in my head, like, really easy. So once I read something a couple times or see a documentary about it, I remember it forever.
To me, and it's funny, if I try to remember some things, I'll forget them immediately. But things stick, man. Like, the things that I don't want to have in my brain always stay there.
That's how it goes, right?
In art history in college, I think it was my first semester. It's been some time, but my professor, as a joke, was like, hey, if anyone can tell me what this Egyptian word means, you get an A on this test. And he was like, oh, Namer. And my brain, it was like, just remember like sitting down next to my dad watching an alien documentary about Egypt and being like, oh my God, fish chisel, 100%. I know this.
Awesome.
And the professor was like, I don't know
how the hell you know that, but
I wish I didn't, Because that's the thing. Like people will be like, "Hey, what you think of the Visions? You know, the book?" And I'll be like, "I read it last week, but I
can't remember any of it." That's that short-term memory loss.